Hello everyone, welcome to iFashi. Today's tutorial will be teaching us how to cut and sew this beautiful dress you're seeing on your screen. It's a very simple and chic dress that can be worn for cut weddings or different types of events. Depends on your choice of color, and trust me, it's also very easy to make. And as you can see on the screen, we've made it twice with different necklines. So whichever design you want on your neckline, the choice is yours to make. So guys, let's get straight into this tutorial. Before we go ahead and cut on fabric, here is the pattern paper that we're going to be drafting on. I've gone ahead to place this pattern paper on fold, and on this pattern paper, I have my basic lines drawn out already. For those of us who don't understand what these basic lines are, let me just take a little recap to explain what we did here. From this first shoulder line on this pattern paper, we came down with 10 inches for bust line, 13 inches for under bust, and 17.5 for front waist line. From that 17.5, I also brought down my tape to mark out 9 inches to get the hip line. And also, on this first line, which is our shoulder line, I took my shoulder measurement divided by 2, and then the same shoulder measurement divided by 2 on the chest line. We also took out our 1-inch shoulder slope from the shoulder line before we marked down the straight line that formed the armhole curve. Also, to know your chest line from the bust line, you can either just go up by 2 inches or you divide your bust by 6 and add 1.5 to your answer to determine your chest line. And then we also came in with 0.5 for our armhole curve to mark out the curve we have on our armhole. So that's that for the basic bodies that we've marked out already. If you don't know how to do this already, we have over 100 videos on this channel where we taught us how to draft a basic bodice. Now we're going to go ahead and continue with the measurements that we would need for this tutorial. And the first one is to extend the length of the dress from the hip downwards. As you can see on your screen, from the hip downwards for the crepe part is not very long. So you're going to determine where you want yours to stop. For me, I'll be using 6.5 from the hip downward. Remember, we're still going to be attaching the Chantilly from there. So I'll mark out this extension line. Whatever you take here, by the time before you add your Chantilly, if it's too long, you can go ahead and trim it off. So I'll mark out this line now. Then we will now go into the nipple, the bust span measurement, which is the nipple to nipple measurement, so that we can take our dart. So I'll impute my bust span measurement, which is the nipple to nipple measurement, divided by 2 on the bust line, the under bust line, the waist line, and then I'll extend this dart with 6 inches downwards from the waist, right? So after taking out that 6 inches dart extension, I'll also take the same bust span measurements on that 6 inches to make sure I have a straight line. So after marking these points, I'll use my straight ruler to connect these 4 points together before we tighten the underbust. So I'll be using 1.5 to tighten this underbust. If you're very busty, you can go ahead and use 2 inches or 2.5. How did I get my 1.5? I minused my underbust circumference from the bust circumference, and I had 3 left. And I divided that 3 inches by 2 because our paper is on fold. So I'll mark out this 1.5 on both sides of my dart line, right? And then I'll use a straight ruler to mark the center front and a curved ruler to mark the side front, because the curved ruler will help us achieve the curve we need on this side front. So after curving it, you're going to use a straight ruler to connect these 2 darts down to meet the end of our dart leg. Remember the 6 inches we extended, so you're going to extend the dart down, and we're going to be cutting off this point. Now the next step is to take our body measurements on these lines. My bust measurement divided by 4 on the bust line, the under bust measurement divided by 4, and then I'll impute my darts back there again, right? Then we'll go to the waist measurement. On the waist, I'll take my waist measurement divided by 4, and then I'll replace the dart that I have on this waist line. So after marking out these measurements, we'll go ahead and use our ruler to connect from this waistline upwards to the armhole line. And then we'll go downwards and take the hip measurements on the hip line. So after connecting this now, we have the upper part almost ready. Let's go to the hip line and take the hip measurement divided by 4. Impute your answer there. And then on this full length line, I'm also going to go ahead and take my hip measurement divided by 4, and I'll minus 1 because it's a fitted dress. And then I'll use my curve ruler to connect from there downwards to the full length of my dress. Now, after making this connection, the shape of the dress is out already. What we need to do now is to take the side bust dart. Why are we taking the side bust dart? Remember, from the shoulder to the waist on the front, mine is 17.5 in front and 16 for back. So we're going to take this off to avoid zipper bulge. And where are we taking it off? We're removing it from the side front. So from your bust line, you're going to come down with the difference you have in your front and back waist measurements. And then we're going to be taking off that dart, so that when we join the front and the back together, the sides will be equal. Now, let's go to the neckline. On this neckline, we're first of all going to take out the regular round neck first before you decide to now mark the shape of the neckline you want. So we're first of all coming with 3.3 to remove the round neck, and then from this shoulder line, we'll now determine the shape you want on the neck. First of all, I'm using my pencil to extend this my chest line so that whatever we're doing, we don't exceed the chest line. Now, after marking out this line we have on the chest line, from the armhole coming inwards, you're going to come in with 5 inches. Now, this 5 inches is the point we're going to connect to meet our shoulder to give us that shape we have on the neck. Now, after connecting this 5 inches, you're going to use your curve ruler to determine how high you want yours to be. Now, as you can see on your screen, we've made this dress different times and with different neckline. Now, if you want it to be very, very high, like the picture on the right, from this chest line, you're going to go up with about 3 or 4 inches. But for the one that's not very high, 1.5 that we used here is just enough to make this curve. So I'm going to be using my marker to highlight this curve now so that we'll know that this is where we'll be following. I just went up with 1.5 because this particular one is not as high as the first one we made. So with my marker now, I'll just highlight these lines so that the neckline that we'll be cutting through will be obvious. Now, that will be all for our front pattern. We've taken our measurements, the neckline, and all of the darts. What I'll do now is to use my tracing wheel to trace out these particular measurements to come out on the other side of my paper. This is not necessary. Please just know that you can draft your pattern without placing it on fold. This is me just trying to be able to open it out by the time I'm done so that you see the shape of the neck. Right? So if your pattern was not drafted on fold, you don't have any business tracing it out like I'm doing, okay? So after using my tracing wheel to trace out all of these measurements now, I'll go ahead and use my marker to highlight all these lines so that it will also be showing on the other side of the paper. I'll speed this up now, and when I'm done with the marking and the highlighting, I'll open it up and then we'll go ahead and draft the back pattern. Now, here is how the full front of the dress looks like. Now, before we go to the back, remember this front has a C-shaped curve on the down part at the point where the Chantilly was added. So that's where we're going to be taking off now. Remember, from the hip line, we came down with 6.5. So from that 6.5 now, I'm going to go up with 3 inches at the middle. And then from that middle, I'll use my curve ruler to mark this curve down to meet the 2 edges so that we can achieve this C-shaped curve we have on that front part. You can also do this after sewing. Just before you add the Chantilly, you can just trim it off on the fabric itself. You can also do this on the pattern before you cut on fabric. Now that's that for the front. We're going to keep it aside now and go to the back and draft the back. For the back pattern, I've also gone ahead to draw out my basic lines like we did for front. The shoulder line, from the shoulder line downwards to the bust line, from the bust line to the waistline. We don't need under bust here, right? So the first line is the shoulder, the next line is the bust point, the third line is the waist line. From there, we also went down with 9.5 to get the hip line. Measure yourself to know the distance from your waist to the hip line. And we'll also extend, and we're also going to extend this back with 6.5. The initial allowance we have here is 4 and it's too short, so we decided to extend it more. That's all I'm going to do here now for this back before we start taking our measurements on all of these lines. Now for this back, please take note, the first thing you're supposed to do is to come in with 2 inches or 1.5 for your zipper allowance. Depends on the zipper allowance that you're comfortable working with. So I came inwards with my zipper allowance and I labeled that part the zipper allowance. Then from this line is where we're going to be taking all of our measurements from, not from the beginning of the paper. And the first measurement we'll be taking now is the bust span measurement, which is the nipple to nipple measurement. I'm marking it on the bust line, on the waistline. I'll go ahead and extend it with the same 6 inches like we used for front, and then I'll take the same nipple to nipple measurement there. I'll use my straight ruler to mark a straight line there before we go ahead and take our dart for the back waist. Now for this back waist, I'll be using 1.5 and I'll share this on both sides, 0.75 on the left and 0.75 on the right. And I'll use my straight ruler to connect these darts together. Now all we have to do is to take our body measurements on these lines. We'll take our bust measurements on the bust line, the waist measurements on the waistline. When you take your waist measurements, please remember to impute the dart that we're cutting off. Remember to replace it there. And then you now connect from the armhole to meet the waist. Like we did for front as well, we'll take our hip measurement divided by 4 on the hip line and connect it to the waist with your curve ruler. And on the full length line, you're going to take your hip measurement divided by 4 minus 1. Then you now do the final connection from the hip down to the full length of the dress. And with that, the back is almost ready. The next thing I'm going to do on this back is to tighten my zipper so that it will lay very flat on my back. So on this waistline, on the zipper allowance, I'm going to come inwards with 0.5. If you used 2 inches before for the zipper allowance, after removing 0.5, you're going to have 1.5 left. If you used 1.5 before, you're going to have 1 inch left after removing the 0.5. So from that 0.5 I took on the waistline, I'm going to use my straight ruler to connect it slightly towards the neck and down to the full length of the dress. So we'll be cutting off that small 0.5 out so that our zip will lay flat on our back. Now for the neckline, you're going to come down like we usually do for back neck. You're going to come down with 1 inch from the shoulder downwards and then mark the curve from the 3.3 inches you have where the shoulder started from. You're going to use your curve ruler to connect to the 1 inch that you came down with for the neck. And that's that for the neck. The next is to now divide this pattern into 2. That's if you want to have center back and side back, right? So on the midpoint of our armhole, when you divide this armhole by 2, the midpoint, from there, you're going to use your ruler to make a connection to meet the bust line. That would help us divide the back into 2. With that, you will now have your center back and your side back. But if you want it to be just a one back piece, you just hold your dart on the dart we have here. You hold it on the fabric, and that will be that for that back. And then for the curve that we have at the back, you can decide to leave your back straight like this and allow only the front to carry that curve. You can also decide to curve your back. This depends on you. But if you're curving your back, remember that you're going to put lining on the Chantilly so that it covers your back. But for this particular one, at the end of the day, we decided to leave the back straight and allow the curve to be on the front only. So that's that for the back drafting. The next thing now is to go ahead and cut this pattern paper out, both the back piece and the front piece. And after that, we'll go ahead and cut out on fabric. Thank you so much for watching to this point. We've come to the end of the drafting. We'll be moving into the sewing part of this tutorial right away. Remember to subscribe if you haven't done that already. Please support this channel by hitting that subscribe button, and also turn on your notifications so that you'll be notified whenever we drop a tutorial. Also know that by being a member of this channel, you're entitled to request for a tutorial, and then we put up the tutorial for votes, and then the highest votes get posted. This particular tutorial you're watching is a requested tutorial. Remember to like and share this video so that it will be recommended to others who would be needing this tutorial. Now, before we continue with the cutting of this front, we need to take out a dart on this chest part, because this curve we have here, sometimes if you don't tighten it, it's going to come out bulging on your chest. So what we're going to do is to extend this bust dart upwards to the end of the chest, and then you shear 0.5 inch dart on both sides and take it off. This 0.5 is on both sides, not 1 inch, right? It's a very tiny dart, but it makes a lot of difference in relaxing the chest. So after taking out that dart, we'll repeat it on the second side. Remember, this paper is on fold. If yours is not on fold, just go ahead and do it only on one side. And when we are done with that, the next is to cut it open, and then we'll go ahead and close our side bust dart. Make sure to close the side bust dart before you cut off the sides completely, because by the time you close the side bust dart, you're going to have broken lines. So after closing the side bust dart, you use your ruler to align the broken lines that we have there to make it even before you go ahead and cut off the excess paper, right? So I'm going to do that right away, and then extend this dart downwards so that we will have a center front and 2 side fronts for our front piece. Just like we did for back. Remember, we extended the back so that we'll be able to have 2 back pieces. We're doing the same thing for front. If you did not put your paper on fold, just go ahead and extend only on the one side that you're cutting on, so that you can have a center front and a side front. And then I'll go ahead and close my side bust dart. So after closing the side bust dart, I have my 2 side fronts and my center front. And this is the back piece that we drafted already. The next thing we're going to be doing now is to transfer these patterns to the fabric that we'll be using to make this dress. So here is the crepe fabric that we'll be using for the upper part of this dress. I'm going to go ahead and speed up this part, place my pattern paper on top of the fabric, and cut out. When you're cutting, remember to add your sewing allowance, because we did not add sewing allowance to the pattern paper. So this is what we have. I had to speed it up because there's nothing much to see there. We just placed our pattern paper on top of the fabric, added our seam allowance on all of the sides except the zipper and the center front, okay? So, and we went ahead and cut, and that gave us what we have on the table. We have the side back and the center back, and then we have the side front and the center front. So the next thing now is to remove my pins and my pattern paper, and then I'll pin these fabrics together the way we're going to be stitching them on the sewing machine. So the 2 side fronts is going to be pinned to the center front. On the wrong side, you pin it because that's the part we'll be stitching on, following our sewing allowance. After pinning the side fronts to the center fronts, we keep the front piece aside and do the same thing for the back. I'll open up the center back and pin the two side backs to the center backs. And please take note, I did this cutting twice because we'll be using this same fabric as our lining. So I'm going to take it to the sewing machine now and stitch both the main fabric and the lining together, and I'll be right back to show us what we have, and then we'll go ahead and iron. After joining all the pieces together, this is what we have. This particular one I have here is the main fabric of the front piece. I'm going to go ahead now and flip it to the wrong side and give it a notch. Any part that you make that has a curve whatsoever, just notch it so that it doesn't affect the right side. So after notching it, I'll go ahead and open up the seams and then I'll give it a good press. Remember, I mentioned I have two pieces. One is lining, one is main fabric. So these two fronts you're seeing here, one will serve as the lining and the other one will be the main fabric. So after notching it now, I'll go ahead and iron, open the seams and iron. I'll do this on both the front and the back, and we'll get to see what we have after ironing. Endeavor to iron your seams whenever you are working so that the neatness will be showing on the outside. Ironing will remove all these puffy seams you're seeing here. Do this for both back and front and you will love what you see. For the back piece, this is what we have. We have joined the center back to the side backs. We also have the lining and the main fabric for the two back piece. So what I'm going to do after ironing is to use the lining to turn the neckline. Right, after opening the seams to iron, I'll take this to the sewing machine and join the neckline. The neckline for the front, the neckline for the back, I'll go ahead and join it. So this is what we have after ironing. We've opened up the seam to press and this is how it looks. We did this for both the main fabric and the lining fabric on the front and the back. So what I'm doing here now is to place them right sides facing each other to turn the neck. I'll turn the neck of the front, coming down from one shoulder through the neck up to the other shoulder, right? And then for the back, I'll place it facing each other, right sides facing each other like this, and then I'll turn the neck. As you can see, this back is still straight. We did not do that curve on the back for this particular one, but if you want to curve your own, you can still curve it in the fabric before you attach the chantilly. So I'll take this to the sewing machine now and turn the neck of the back and the neck of the front, and then I'll go ahead and fix my zipper for this back piece. So the next time you'll be seeing this, we would have joined the shoulders and added the zipper, and I'll be right back to show you guys. So this is what we have. We have turned the neck using the lining, and then for the shoulders, we used one shoulder to turn the other, and we have fixed our zip. Now for the length I'll be working with is 32 inches, and that's exactly what I have at my back. 32 inches before the chantilly, right? So which means this front, I'm going to have to do more curving on this front part. Please measure the back and the front to make sure you have the length you need before you start fixing your chantilly. So after measuring from the shoulder down to the full length of both the back and front, and I have 32 inches, I'm just going to go ahead now and shape this dress so that I can close the two sides and fix the chantilly. So from the shoulder down, I marked the waist point and I took my waist measurement there and marked out the remaining allowance that I'll be using to join the back and front together. From there, I came down with 9 inches to mark out the hip point, where I'll be taking my hip measurement and I'll connect it from the waist down to meet the hip down to the full length. So after marking out these measurements on the dress, I'll go ahead now and take it to the sewing machine to join these two sides together, following this my allowance. And also for the front, I'm going to have to increase the curve that I have there so that the two sides will be equal. So after shaping it with the measurements now, I'll mark it out and pin down the two sides together, take it to the sewing machine and join. And I'll be right back to show you what we have. before we go ahead and fix the chantilly that is under this dress. Now for this curved part we have under, remember I mentioned you can do the curves on the fabric itself or on the pattern. I realized the curve I have here is longer than what the owner of this dress wants. So I had to come up with 2 inches for the front only and mark out the curve. So that's what we have here. The next thing I'm going to do now is to take the shoulder measurement and cut off any excess I have there before I go ahead and add the sleeve. The shoulder I'm working with is 16, so from the zipper to the armhole, I'm not supposed to exceed more than 8.5 because I'll use the 5 inches to add the sleeve. So after shaping that shoulder part, this is the chantilly we're going to be using for this dress. Remember, the dress has chantilly on the sleeve and on the down part. This chantilly is 2.5 yards. You can go ahead and use the full length, cut it out according to the length of the chantilly you're adding under. If the chantilly you're adding under is 10 inches, you're going to cut out 10 inches and join them together into one long one. Then you pleat it under the dress. I'll go ahead now, cut out the long one we'll be pleating under, then cut out the one we'll be using for sleeve. So luckily for me, this particular chantilly I'm working with has a scallop design, so I wouldn't have to be folding the down part or weaving the down part. What I just need to do is to cut, and it also falls along the 8 inches I want as the length of the chantilly. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim according to this scallop we have here, and then I'll go ahead and join them together so that to be long enough for me to gather under. And after doing the joining, this is what we have. I have one very long chantilly fabric like this, and the down part is already trimmed. So what I need to do now is to go to the machine and pleat it all around the down part of this dress, and then we'll attach the sleeves. Now this is what it looks like after pleating the chantilly to the down part of the dress. You see that the beauty of the dress is coming out already, and you can see the curved shape that we put in the front. So this is the sleeve that will be attaching. There are 2, one will be on the left and the other on the right. So after attaching the sleeve, that will be that for this dress. And as for the back of the dress, see how flat our zipper is laying. It is from proper drafting that you would see the results of your zipper. So after attaching the sleeves, this is the dress that we made, guys. So on your left is the one I made initially for myself, and on your right is the one the model requested for. Please take note, the dress is bigger than the model wearing it because it wasn't made in her size, and the owner also requested some adjustments. But from the tutorial, you can decide to adjust to however you want yours to be. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.